True story. Because of this, people start to touch the nerve of what the food safety it is. It's very simple. You see 99 cents. So Taco Bell at the time is only 99 cents. In $1 you can buy a taco. And that beef burger is probably 80 cents, so $1. So 4 kids eat it. They died. Only see how old it is. 2 years, or 3 years old, or 6 years old. And at the end of the day, how many people are hospitalized? 171. 45, and 4 kids dead. So this is a big story. You always see it's like hamburger kill kids. That's touch the nerve of the whole United States. The food safety. Because it's very easy. That's undercooked. It's so easy. If you well cooked it, it's not going to be has any problem. But why people do undercooked? All the beef products we talk about tenderness, juiciness, and the flavor. When it's undercooked, it's more tender. Now this is different from the chicken. Chicken steaks, you never eat anything raw or undercooked because it won't be good. But beef, you go order it, sometimes you order medium rare, is that right? Because the tenderness is more tender. Nobody really eats raw, all the bleeding there, no. But I tell you, that's what it is. Now why it's a problem? This Shiga toxin is very magic. Shiga toxin has 2. STX1 and STX2. This 2 is more severe actually. Why they will cause blood kidney? Because on the kidneys there is a position called CV3 in the kidney. And this kidney is also, on the kidney, this is also an AB toxin. They attach to CV3 on the kidney like an AB toxin, have a toxin domain, transmembrane domain. They start to transfer the toxin, and then they cause a problem. So they cause HUS. And for the kids, they cannot survive that because their immune system has not been immuted already at all. Because of these 2 toxins. So later on, my old boss in Seattle, he developed a method which is a rapid testing using PCR. To testing E. coli 057H7 can be only in 9 hours. How they do it? Test the toxin. If the meat products you find Shiga toxin 1, Shiga toxin 2, obviously it's contaminated with E. coli 157H7. Now for the ground beef, what they do? Do they throw away? No. They further cook to ready to eat meat. So that's why all the hot dogs, the frankfurters in the United States, most of them is coming from those we call them beef, and then they recook. And it's allowed to do. I'm serious. So just some story to tell you. At the end of the day, this comes out later, about like 1997. USDA FSIS, Food Safety Inspection Service. They come out with some documents, which is after risk assessment of non-tagged beef. They say, all of the meat products, you need to cook to the internal temperature of 160 degrees Fahrenheit, 71.1 degrees Celsius. Could kill E. coli 057H7. Be very careful. This is confusing you. This is a beef steak, is that right? When you're cooking, which one turns purple first? The surface, is that right? How do you know it's cooked well done? You need a thermocouple there. What you talk about here, the documents, 160 degrees Fahrenheit equals 71.1 is geometric center. Which is right here. Not here. Not here. When you put this on the oven, you need to make sure the geometric center meets 71.1. So what you need to do? You need a thermocouple. Now, this is a very old document. Later on, people even recommended, FSO recommended, the beef needs to rest 3 minutes. Because the mild heat still could kill more bacteria. So when you go restaurant, you order. They usually come out, it's a little bit light, it's a little bit like warmed up, not really too hot. Is that right? It's already been a little bit lower temperature because the rest is 3 minutes. Okay, so most of the restaurants do that. So that's what they come with guidance. And I say, because of this one, touch the nerve of everybody. We have to do something. What it comes out is the HACCP plan. HACCP. So we want to talk about that. What is HACCP? This is originally coming from a Fewsbury company in 1950s. Well, at that time, they are developing some of the food safety plan for the people go to the space, for NASA. And it's a very common sense. Everybody go to the space when you eat the food, it has to be safe. Because if you have trouble, nobody can save you. There's no hospital in the space, is that right? So, they introduced this concept. Talk about HACCP. But I want to tell you, we should be very careful. HACCP is a proactive strategy to control the foodborne pathogen, but does not mean it's guaranteed for the safety. Because it's a lots of procedure you have to follow, and there are 7 principles, and it comes out very quickly. So what is HACCP? This is a methodological and systematic application of appropriate science technology to plan, control, document safe production, handling, preparation of foods. They are involving risk management, prevention, and it should be applied from farm to table for all the processing of the food production. What do we care about? Critical control points. Any point in the food processing, from raw to finished products, you can do something to control the food safety, minimized or eliminate or under the regulation. Now, what do we really care about the concern? Biological, physical, and chemical safety. What's the FSIS concept? Where it comes from? 1996, 1993 had an outbreak. 3 years later, United States FSIS requires meat and poultry products need to establish a HACCP plan. And in 1996, they published a very heavy document. It's called a Federal Register. It's a law named by pathogen reduction and hazard analysis and critical control point system. Comes out with 7 principles. This is their documents right there. Federal Register, Department of Agriculture. Now, I want to mention here a little bit. What means pathogen reduction here? I read this before when I was students. Very heavy, 300 pages. Pathogen reduction here, they are talking about is reduce salmonella. That makes sense. I just mentioned salmonella is the #1 causing, killing, deaths in the United States. That makes sense. Now, what they are talking about, they talk about the HACCP plan. They're also talking about using biotype 1 generic E. coli as an indicator bacteria for talking about fecal contamination. Now, there's lots of methods we can do that. We just keep talking about this. One of the methods later is 3M view. We get into that. What's the key for this document? 7 principles. Conduct a hazard analysis. What is a hazard analysis? That could be biological, chemical, and the physical. That's all the hazards. What is the physical? Metal and dust. What is chemical? Mercury. Sometimes you have a mercury residue there. What is biological? Virus, bacteria. Second, establish a critical control points. An acronym, we call it CCP. Number 3, establish a critical limit. This critical limit is corresponding to each critical control point. So let's say you are going to cooking the steaks. We're going to set up the critical control points is the cooking. Okay, then what's the critical limit? That has to be a fixed number. It's never going to be a range. Let's say you cook to 160 degrees Fahrenheit. This is the critical limit. It's not a range. Always remember, it cannot be a range. This is not acceptable. Okay, not a range, it's a fixed number. Number 4, what we do? Establish corrective action. Is that right? Sorry, establish monitoring procedures. Monitoring procedures. We need people be there. Quality control, quality assurance people. Make sure critical control points is working. Make sure the critical limits is reached the way the critical control points are working. Now, the critical control points is a step at which the food processing, the control can be applied and reduce risk to below the required documents or below the required law. You can easily say that. The critical limits is a fixed physical parameter or chemical parameter corresponding to the critical control points. Make sure it's well controlled. The monitoring procedure, we need to make sure it is working. Okay. If something happens, what are we going to do? Then a deviation happens, or we can say mistake, errors. We need to fix it. Establish corrective actions. Okay, I have a ground beef. Ground beef stored in a cooler, 4 degrees Celsius. The storage is a CCP. Critical limit is temperature 4 degrees Celsius. One day in the morning, I go there to see the thermometer. It's become 10 degrees Celsius. What are we going to do? We're going to have to take corrective actions, is that right? First of all those beef have to take it out. You cannot go to supply chain. Second, the cooler need to fix it. Is that right? Yeah, that's the corrective actions. Okay, what are we going to do last one? Validation and verification. Okay, validation, most of the time, we are talking about is whether the CCP works. This is usually done in-house. So a company, they have a microbiologist that can do those monitoring testing. I'm set up 160 degrees Fahrenheit for cooking. Are you make sure there's no bacteria? You're going to have to do challenge study and thermal inactivation study. That's validation. Now what's going to do the verification? Verification usually is a third party. So like a consulting company, like what I worked with before, the IEH consulting company in Seattle, they could do that. They want to make sure your HACCP plan is working. They're going to look at everything, especially your recording and documentation. The last one. Recording and documentation. That's the 7 principles. Very important. The documentation. Data log, temperature log, have QC, have a verification people sign. We want to make sure everything is working, okay? But I'm guaranteeing you, food have the different characteristics. Every different foods, you need to have a unique HACCP plan for that. HACCP plan is not going to work in universal for everything. One HACCP plan not universal for everything. So USD FSIs do have some model online, you can use it. But if you own products, you have to establish your own stuff. Now so far, for meat and poultry, FSIFS have some of the module. you can use it. For seafoods and juice, FDA is responsible for that. They do have some model. But there is one thing you need to know. There is no hazard plan for fresh produce, unfortunately. So you say you're going to control the pathogen on the apple. No, there's no hazard plan. Lettuce, you want to control bacteria on the lettuce? No. Some people say you're going to wash in the fresh produce. Wash the fresh produce, chlorine. No, it does not work too much. And there's plenty of data we're showing you. If you wash lettuce in a chlorine with 200 parts per million, it's not going to cure everything. And the washing, even there's a debate about right now whether you should wash produce, because washing will cause cross-contamination sometimes. And it's not going to contribute too much for the pathogen reduction. So I just want to tell you, we don't have a hazard plan for fresh produce. Where it comes, Food Safety Modernization Act. It's covered, Food Safety, Produce Safety Law, which is talk about produce. Because there is no hazard plan for the fresh produce. And we always think fresh produce is safe. Question? Oh, okay. I have your hands on this. There is something really bad happens again. In 2006 in Salinas. You know the Central Valley of California, is that right? Up Sacramento, San Francisco, Los Angeles, San Diego, Central Valley, Salinas, close to San Jose. It's the #1 fresh produce supply in the United States. When you go buy a bag of the fresh produce, fresh cut produce, you see it's Fresh Express, Taylor Farms, dough, even the fresh juice, which is called dough. Those are all the headquarters is in CA. What are the other two? Arizona, Yuma, and Florida. Those are the 3 big states for all the supply of the fresh produce. We had some high tunnel tomato, it's only for farmers market. You never see West Virginia high tunnel tomato in the markets, is that right? Very few. Maybe they're selling to Virginia. So just want to let you know, the big #1 fresh produce supply is Central Valley of California, in Salinas. The company called Taylor Farms in 2006. This is the first time in a package, the fresh spinach, find a single colony of E. coli 01578H7. It caused 200 people died almost, 26 states, 51% hospitalization, 71% female, 11% children, and 3 deaths. And West Virginia has like 1 case, and Pennsylvania has like 5 or 6. Utah, Wisconsin, and Ohio, that's a big places. Even CA itself, it doesn't bother too much because it all comes out. Okay? Because of these outbreaks, people start to do something regarding fresh produce safety. And the University of Georgia start to do something a lot. Before that, nobody cared about it. And I tell you one thing, Dr. Larry Bichon in University of Georgia published a chlorine sanitizing fresh produce in Journal of Food Protection in 1998. When the outbreaks happened, that paper is cited almost by 1,000 times by the different agencies, using as a template to establish all these policies, which means not many research do at the time. They always think it's safe. Because you like to eat fresh produce. It's more vitamins, more some little bit protein, more minerals. It's gives you a high nutrition supplier. And it's healthy. However, it's happened. But people doesn't care about too much. Unless this one happens. What is this guy? Is cantaloupe in Jason Farm at Colorado. This had happened 2010. The Jason Farm, they have a cantaloupe. Their cantaloupe supply chain just passing the third-party audit with the A+ grade. Couple of days later, they had outbreaks. Listeria monocytogenes with the whole cantaloupe caused 147 people dead in 28 states. 33 people are dead. That's a big problem. You know, cantaloupe is difficult to control. Cantaloupe, the surface is not smooth. There's a lot of concave there. It's pretty rough. And those wells there, the bacteria can survive Very easy to form what kind of bacteria? Biofilm. So it's very difficult to control. I'm going to tell you, you will be a hero. If I inoculate 5 log bacteria on the cantaloupe surface, then you tell me you have something to remove everything. Because of that the very special structure. So cantaloupe surface is difficult to control. At that time, it's after this outbreak comes out, it's a hot topic. Everybody do the research for Listeria on the cantaloupes. So you see the Listeria could be on the cantaloupes. It's a big deal. Now, because of this, people comes out what? Fisma. Not 100% correlated, but I tell you, in my understanding, it's a huge correlated. If there's no 33 people died for the Jason farms, the Fisma will be delayed another 5 to 6 years. This comes out with Fisma. What is Fisma? Food Safety Modernization Act. There is 7 major rules, including domestic and imported foods for human animal suppliers using. We don't talk about everything. We care about is produce safety and preventive control. Now, Fisma signed into the law by President Obama in January 4th, 2011, about a year after this outbreak happens. Okay, what Fisma talks about? When we talk about all the other food products, we are talking about the risk-based preventive control. You need to have their food safety plan. This control is based on the HACCP concept. Talk about preventive, talk about measures, talk about GMP, good manufacturing practice, designed to minimize risks of food safety hazards. But I tell you one thing, when I read through everything, it's very similar to the HACCP. Has CCP. They don't say it's a critical control point, they say it's a critical process controls. They have a sanitation preventive control. In HACCP, it's called a sanitation, standard operation procedures of sanitation. It's a prerequisite program for HACCP. And the Fisma has it too. Supply chain preventive control, they have it. And the recall plan, they have it. There are 3 different levels of the recall. Number 1, most likely cause disease, which is pathogen. Number 2 is allergy. Number 3 is mislabeled. 3 different levels. Now, what's new in the risk-based preventive control is the allergy control. What are the allergy? Egg is allergy, nuts is allergy, honey is allergy, even fish is allergy. When you have allergy, what's going to happen? Overreacted with the immune. Red skin comes out. So what they do? If anything with allergy during the food processing, you need to put a label with different color. That's an easy way to do it. So in the food safety area, people talk about this all the time. Some people say it's a little bit of plagiarism because it's like a copy that has it. They just do a little bit of modification. Okay? Question?
Is it expensive for these companies to have to start enroll, like doing this HACCP and?
Yes, it's expensive. HACCP, you need to have a HACCP plan set up. It's got to be a HACCP team. And that's another whole class called a HACCP certification class. I try to do that. It's on my mind in my plan. So when the people taking like 10 course classes, they need to develop a HACCP plan. And then get certification from HACCP Alliance. The headquarters is Texas A&M University. The name is Carrie Harris, and the lady taking care of that is Carrie Harris, if I remember. Then you have the company, you have a HACCP team. Then you have this HACCP plan. And every critical control point, you need a QC, which means a quality control person to control. Then you need an internal team for the monitoring and corrective actions. You need to also hire a third party to do verification. It's cost a lot of money for them.
Is there a lot of companies out of business, or was there a lot of lobbying against it?
Not really lobbying against it, but the story is that 1996, when they first have this HACCP plan, is not required everybody have to do. It's only a large company. We call it a large establishment. Then in 1997, 1998, they start to require the medium size. The small, the very small, let's say some local company in West Virginia, that is up to even 2002. So they have like 5-6 years gap, but right now they do require to do that. Most of those persons get a training not for us. They are from Department of Agriculture in Charleston, or they get training certification from Pennsylvania State University in College Park, because they give the training all the times. Okay, that's a very good question.
Has anything developed from the romaine outbreak of H1N157?
No.
E. coli? Nothing has developed from that?
Because it's a fresh produce.
Okay.
And I mentioned the fresh produce, there is no hazard plan.
Yeah.
Because you can set up the current concentration. The washing may be the one, you can guarantee. Cold storage room might be one. You cannot say it's a thermometer you tested at 4 degrees Celsius, nothing grow. And the fresh produce is very dirty, I can tell you.
Yeah, that's
because it's coming from soil.
soil.
And you know that. You never do, whatever you do, it's not going to remove them. People even do research, see the domain stain, and when you go, it's going to penetrate very easy. So it's difficult to remove. Okay?
That way you still do farmers markets, it's fresh produce, there's no hazard.
Yeah, there's no hazard plan for it. That's a very, even juice they have it.
Yeah.
You know, they don't have the hazard plan for the fresh produce. So that's why they have a food produce rules. But food produce rules, if we want to talk about this in more detail, that's some extension class will have. They talk about agriculture, water the control. The agricultural water they require you to do from the irrigation. Start the irrigation, processing, and the final, the wastewater, you need to control the quality, microbial quality, which means there's no fecal contamination. So basically, which we talk in the labs, they're doing the same thing. And also the manure, you can't use a fresh manure. Manure have to be at least 48 hours because you come out from the poop from the human beings. They have intestinal bacteria everywhere, possibly E. coli. And the E. coli 0157 is very easy to isolate it. You get a soil from the cattle farm, you get it. You get E. coli 0157 H7. Okay, very good question. Now, then they require you to document the procedure, corrective limits, monitoring, action, verification, record keeping. So very similar to the hazard. That's why people say it's a plagiarism. Quotation mark, of course. Because the more important thing they care about is allergy. What they care about, biological, chemical, physical, we just mentioned them. Biological could be salmonella, E. coli, listeria, virus, hepatitis A, norovirus, parasites, molds, allergens, clean compounds, and the physicals. And they pointed out you have to do a food safety plan. It's a setting of the written documents. It's based on food safety principles, incorporates hazard analysis, preventive control, recall, and everything. And the outcome, you have to make sure you have a prerequisite plan set up, good manufacturing practice, and sanitation operation procedures. Those need to be done. This comes up with the whole picture, okay? And I always say, the best resource nearby is Pennsylvania State University, the extension.